So I'm wandering around here, MACNA 2018 in Las Vegas, just looking for something new and different that is not in the aquarium trade in Australia yet that I know of. And apparently this is on the way. This is a product called Stacks, and I'll just pass over to one of our industry legends who's going to tell us all about this particular product, Mr. Julian Sprung.
Hi, I'm Julian Sprung from Two Little Fishies, and yes, this is our new product, Stacks. It's a natural limestone rock that's mined in Florida. It's pressure cleaned and then sliced like bread so that you have a flat side on both sides. That makes it really cool to put on the bottom of an aquarium. It also makes it great for aquascaping because literally it ends up being like putting bricks together or like Lego. You can create any shape of aquascape that you want just simply by stacking them. That's why the name is Stacks. The rocks are, all of these holes give you the opportunity to insert and glue corals in place. The edges are also a great place where you can glue corals. We have a product called Sticks. Think of that, Sticks and Stacks, which is a cement. It's a dry powder cement with a liquid admixture. You can mix it right there in the bucket. We include a spatula for doing that. You don't have to mix up the whole batch. You can mix up only what you need. And you spread it on there. You make it to like a putty consistency, and you spread it on there like peanut butter on bread. Once you've already determined how you want your aquascape to look, then you put the sticks in there and press it in place and leave it. You don't do that underwater. You want to do that dry, but the rocks don't have to be bone dry. They can be wet, not a problem. And you want to let it cure for a few hours before you attempt to move it. It gets a full cure in 24 hours. So the little feet are a byproduct of Stacks. These are denser pieces. They're sliced the same way. And they make great bases for like a larger coral frag or an elegance coral or a euphilia. You put it on there, and because it has a flat base that allows you to put the coral exactly where you want it, you can cover that base with sand if you wanted to or not. Some of them have a flat edge on the side, so you could put little baby coral frags there and they would coalesce into a larger frag and then grow up. So it's handy. A little feet base for corals. Another byproduct of Stacks is little rocks. And you could imagine that would make a beautiful rubble bottom in an African cichlid tank or a rubble bottom in a marine aquarium. And it's like a refugium for little copepods and amphipods. In addition to that, these little rocks have lots of holes and structure and an organic shape that makes them kind of an alternative to a frag plug. You know, frag plugs don't look very natural in the aquarium, but you could glue a coral frag on that, place it on the bottom of the aquarium, and it's beautiful. Each one is unique. So these are our aragonite sands. We have two different grain sizes. This one is a sugar fine sand, and this one is a 3 millimeter more coarse type sand. Both of them are live. They're packed with microbes that help to denitrify as well as handle the natural nitrification process in an aquarium. We have refugite, which is also a live sand, but it's a mineral-rich sand, which makes it great for refugia if you wanted to grow macroalgae, or it's also wonderful for goniopora and other LPS corals that live in the nearshore environment that typical on a black sand type substrate. Remag is a media that's to be used in a calcium reactor where it can be dissolved by the CO2. You mix it with aragonite media like our Reborn. I don't know whether Reborn, I don't believe that's available in Australia, but I'm sure you have other calcium reactor media.
I haven't seen any of these.
Yeah, so Remag has a high concentration of magnesium, so that helps to supplement and maintain a magnesium level.
Is there ratios recommended?
Yes, it's a 1 to 9 parts ratio. Yeah, that's all, by volume. Yeah. So actually 1 part Remag, 9 parts Reborn or other calcium carbonate reactor media.
So Julian's bringing out a new product lately, which is called Phosban L, which is a liquid base. So I'll just hand over to Julian to explain the relationships of how these products should actually be used and their benefits in the fight against phosphate and algae.
Sometimes it can be a tough fight, huh? You know, when you have a reef aquarium and you have a lot of fish and you've got to feed them, that food contributes to a big accumulation of phosphate. So we're all familiar with using GFO, the granular ferric oxyhydroxide, like Phosban, that you put in a media reactor. And it's very effective at pulling down a phosphate level, you know, all the way down to near zero, 0.01 parts per million. Some of the high-end reef keepers try to achieve a level like that, at least below 0.02. Now, many hobbyists, because they have a high fish population, end up with a phosphate concentration of 0.5 or even 1 or 2 parts per million, which is much, much higher. It becomes economically unfeasible to use GFO to deal with that high of a phosphate level. So under those circumstances, the chemical lanthanum chloride is a very effective means and much more cost-effective way of bringing the phosphate level down. So Phosban L is a liquid that is a 33% solution of lanthanum chloride in water. Because it's so effective, you need to dose it very slowly. You want to dilute it according to the instructions on the bottle and then add it drop-wise. You can see, for example, here, this bottle can remove 1 part per million from 6,000 gallons of water. And 1 part per million is a lot, you know, when you consider, you know, you're trying to bring it down to 0.01. So you would never want to add the recommended dosage just all at once. You would want to set up kind of a drip system or use a dosing pump. We recommend to use a filter sock, 10 micron or less, 10 or 5 micron filter sock to trap the precipitate. When lanthanum chloride reacts with phosphate that's dissolved in the water, it forms a lanthanum phosphate, and that has a milky, whitish, cloudy appearance, and you don't want that ending up in your aquarium, so you want to trap it.
Do you see advantages dosing it into the skimmer?
Putting it into the protein skimmer is a way to do it. If you're adding it drop-wise, as you should, and it's a very powerful protein skimmer, it can catch that precipitate. So that is another way of doing it. Into a small protein skimmer, it'll probably pass through. But some of the, I think the people who run big aquariums with a lot of fish are probably having a very powerful protein skimmer. So that's a good way. And to be safe, if you want to have a filter sock on the exit coming out of the skimmer, that would be double protection. So yes, good point. Thank you. I think that covers the, oh, I missed one part. It's very important. You might say, well, how do I decide whether to use this or this? And the answer is you really can use both, because you want to use Phosban L to bring the phosphate level down from whatever high level it is down to about 0.1 parts per million. After 0.1 parts per million, you would want to stop dosing Phosban L and continue to bring the phosphate level down using just regular Phosban. So you can use them both simultaneously.
And are 2 little fishes going to consider moving into test kits at all?
Not immediately, and maybe never. That's, you know, there are a number of test kits on the market. A phosphate kit is something that kind of makes sense for a company that sells products for taking phosphate out of the water, but You know, I've seen reasonably good kits on the market, and I don't like to just jump in and do the same thing.
And can you explain the difference about how not all phosphate's testable?
Well, it's not exactly a true statement. You know, you can test all the phosphate, but your hobby kit is really only measuring inorganic soluble phosphate. There are organic forms. It would require a more sophisticated kind of a test to measure. So yeah, in effect, for the hobbyist, it's not testable. And of course, there's phosphate that's bound to a substrate. It's in the sand or on the rocks, and it's not something that you're reading in the water, but it's available to the algae that's growing on the rocks or on the sand. So you have that contradiction of, hey, I'm measuring no phosphate in the water, but the algae is growing. So it can utilize mobilize phosphate directly from the substrate.
Can you explain the different phosphates that people would want to know about? And their solutions?
Yeah. It's not really a matter of different phosphates. It's inorganic phosphate, orthophosphate in the water. It's really a matter of the concentration, where we had covered that. So, you know, really low level, if you're below 0.1, GFO is your solution for that. If you're up higher, then dosing the lanthanum chloride is the way. There are aluminum hydroxide or aluminum oxide granules that are also used, but they're much less effective than the iron is.
And what's your knowledge on the lanthanum-based removers being able to get rid of like calcium diphosphate and the ones that are...
Well, yeah, bound, pardon me, there we go. Bound solutions, it's not likely to be in the water. You know, you're talking about soluble.
My understanding is that the phosphate that you'll find on like the calcium diphosphate will also be split and bound by the lanthanum.
I don't believe that calcium phosphate or calcium diphosphate is going to be something in the water, soluble like that.
But what I understand, and I'm not saying
right.
I understand from chemists that I've spoken
right.
to, is that the difference between that one is that one can actually interrupt and remove the calcium diphosphate. It's a more aggressive cling than the calcium. So whereas that one, you've got to wait for the concentrations of the water to go down for that to be available for that to remove.
Yes.
Whereas that one can go straight into the actual solid and actually get rid of the phosphate. So this one doesn't wait, this is my understanding, this one doesn't wait for the phosphate to come out into
solution.
It's
binding it right there. Well, that would require free lanthanum to be drifting around in the aquarium to do that, and theoretically it's doable, but the instructions are telling you to avoid that by precipitating out, whether in a protein skimmer or in a filter sock. So then there wouldn't be free lanthanum to bind with the phosphate in the substrate. I know theoretically you could suggest treating rocks. You know, if a rock is suspected of having a lot of phosphate, put it in a bath and add lanthanum chloride to it to try to bind. Yeah, that probably does. I haven't tried it, so I can't really comment, but it's an idea.
I've spoken to people that claim success
doing that. Well, I mean, how would you show it? The calcium phosphate is already there and insoluble. Then you would be substituting lanthanum phosphate, which is insoluble, but they both could be dissolved